Multiverse movies are becoming incredibly common nowadays, and today we're looking at two, one from Marvel and one from DC. One handled the multiverse aspect very well, and the other one starred Ezra Miller. It's The Flash versus Spider-Man No Way Home on this episode of Film Face-Offs. Spider-Man is one of the most beloved and recognizable characters in all of fiction. While the MCU's version of the character has been somewhat divisive since his introduction in Captain America Civil War, there's no denying that Tom Holland does a fantastic job in the role. And this movie finally gives the character a bit more stakes, other than just being the comedic movies throughout the saga. And the side characters are usually pretty good. Ned Leeds is a pretty good sidekick to the character. Happy Hogan is honestly better in these movies than he is in the Iron Man films. And Aunt May was developed a lot more in this movie than she had been in the previous ones. Zendaya's MJ, however, isn't that great for me. While the acting from Zendaya is fine, the character is so far removed from the comics that it's just distracting. And they didn't really do much to up the character in this movie that they hadn't already done in the last few. And then there's the returning characters from previous franchises, including Alfred Molina as Dr. Octopus, Jamie Foxx as Electro, Willem Dafoe as Green Goblin, Rhys Ifans as Lizard. I'm pretty sure I said that right. Actually, I'm pretty sure I said that wrong, but I digress. And Thomas Hayden Church's Sandman, and then you obviously can't talk about this movie without mentioning the returns of Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, fan favorites to this day, and they of course do phenomenal with their returns, and I would be remiss if I didn't at least briefly bring up the cameo by Charlie Cox's Daredevil. The Flash, however, does not have that great a cast. Ezra Miller, putting aside his criminal activities, is a terrible choice for Barry Allen. His acting is extremely hokey, and he's extremely annoying, even as the older Barry. Michael Keaton is of course great as Batman, but they don't do much with the character except kill him off twice in insulting fashion. Sasha Kelly as Supergirl apparently went to the Daisy Ridley School of Acting, as she has no emotions throughout the entire film and then does nothing but scream during the final battle. And if you want to talk about cameos, this movie has some of the worst, because all of the cameos are done in god-awful CGI. Now, some of these I'm okay with, like Nicolas Cage or Teddy Sears' Jake Garrick, but the point where I draw the line is resurrecting dead actors such as George Reeves, Christopher Reeves, and Adam West. That's just insulting. And yes, there are some other ones from previous films, like Jason Momoa shows up at the end credits, Arthur Curry has a brief appearance, and Zod shows up in the final battle, but the cast for this movie is just very unimpressive, or they're just used as fan service, and that's just despicable. After Mysterio reveals Spider-Man's identity to the world, Peter Parker goes to Doctor Strange to try to erase everyone's memory of him being Spider-Man. But when the spell goes awry, it starts to bring various people from other dimensions who are enemies of Spider-Man. The plot itself doesn't really make a whole lot of sense and is just a giant excuse to get these characters from old franchises back, but it's done a lot better than it would sound, because it's all about the smaller interactions that makes these characters likable and relatable, especially the villains. They do a better job with some of these villains than the previous movies did, especially ones like Green Goblin and Electro. Green Goblin in particular I couldn't take seriously in the original Spider-Man at all, but here he's not only is Norman a lot more likable, but the Goblin's a lot more intimidating here. And again, when it comes to the heroes, the stakes are higher, so it feels like the heroes have more depth. Peter especially, as he didn't have a lot of characters throughout the first two films, he finally gets to evolve in this movie and come into his own as a hero. He's been joked about being Iron Man Jr. throughout the entire franchise, but finally comes into his own by the end of this movie. The Flash is an adaptation of Flashpoint, where Barry goes back in time to save his mother from dying and creates an entirely new timeline. Unfortunately, and much like No Way Home, it has the same kind of problem where it doesn't make any sense, but it doesn't have the same luxury as No Way Home, where No Way Home had a good script. The Flash is just a bunch of nonsense that's never really explained. They try to do this new thing with time travel, but not only does it not really make a ton of sense, but they completely forget how they completely ditch how it works in the final act of the movie by reverting back to how time travel used to be done in films and TV shows. Not only that, the cameos, like I said, in this movie, it's just an excuse for cameos, but none of the cameos are very good, and Michael Keaton doesn't even get to do that much in this film, and then it just repeats the plot of Man of Steel, and Man of Steel already wasn't that good to begin with, and then they somehow even do it worse. Not sure how they pulled that off. The CGI in The Flash is probably the most offensive thing I've subjected my eyes to since, well, the CGI in the Flash TV show. None of it looks very good. The CGI humans especially look like wax models. Everything in the Speed Force just looks hideous. There's a couple times where it doesn't look too bad, but everything, especially with the Speed Force, just looks horrendous. There's nothing, I guess, abhorrent about the action sequences, but none of it's very special. The final battle is a mess, and again, forgets the time travel rules. The big bad of the movie only shows up for about 5 minutes, and they barely fight it. The fight scene to rescue Supergirl is okay, but it's mostly just Batman doing all the work and Flash just standing around doing nothing. And other than that, there's not really much action to be had, unless you want to count the beginning where he saves a bunch of babies from falling out of a building with some awful CGI and some pretty cringeworthy moments. The action in Spider-Man No Way Home isn't top tier for the MCU, but it's still pretty damn good. A fight between an 8-legged spider and an 8-legged octopus is a genius idea, and it's probably been done in the comics. I would check, but I don't really want to. And the condo fight is definitely the highlight. The final battle is good, but it is a bit dark and murky and hard to see, and I think they could have upped the choreography a bit, but it's just so much fun watching these three Spider-Man fight these villains from the past that we've seen in different action sequences. And again, and I guess you could count the opening chase as an action sequence, but I really don't. But I would say probably the highlight is not the condo fight, but is actually the mirror dimension battle between Spider-Man and Doctor Strange. The CGI can look a little weird every once in a while, but it's nowhere near as offensive as the Flash's. I'm gonna keep this round short and sweet. Michael Giacchino did the score for No Way Home, and it's definitely serviceable enough for the film, even if it doesn't really stand out. However, what does stand out are tracks from previous films, such as Electro's theme and the Amazing Spider-Man theme, at least the piano rendition, showing up when Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man first appears. The Flash's soundtrack was done by Benjamin Wallfish. I'm pretty sure I'm saying that wrong. And again, it's forgettable. There's nothing much to talk about with the scores for these movies, because there's nothing that jumps out at me that's, again, that great, so we're just gonna move on. I'm not gonna act like this battle was ever any close. Spider-Man No Way Home is regarded nowadays as one of the best MCU films, despite coming out very recently and having a buttload of other movies up against it. But it's still seen as one of the best Spider-Man films as well. The Flash has become a running joke on the internet now for its CGI, and for the fact that it took this long only for it to end up as bad as it is. For me, it's not a contest. Spider-Man No Way Home gets the win. But I want to hear from you guys. Thank you all so much for watching, and go to the community tab to vote for your winner, and I will see you all next time. Bye.